Chit Sukhasvarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we had fairly completely analyzed threadbare this statement, Mahavakya, Tattvamasi from the Chandogya. And this was essentially the cryptical statement of the Upanishad that was explained from a number of points of view. First, Advaita Vedanta, and the other, Madhyamaka Buddhism, that we had talked about earlier. Now we come to the further analysis. Then came the philosophers. We've said, repeated this, we've read this out a little bit, but I think it's worth repetition. Then came the philosophers. The work of the Upanishads seems to have ended at that point. The next was taken up by the philosophers. The framework was given them by the Upanishads, and they had to fill in the details. So many questions would naturally arise, taking for granted that there is but one impersonal principle which is manifesting itself in all these manifold forms. How is it that the one becomes the many? It is another way of putting the same old question, which in its crude form comes into the human heart as the inquiry into the cause of evil and so forth. Why does evil exist in the world, and what is its cause? But the same question has now become refined, abstracted. No more is it asked from the platform of the senses why we are unhappy, but from the platform of philosophy. How is it that this one principle becomes manifold? And the answer, as we have seen, the best answer that India has produced is the theory of Maya, which says that it really has not become manifold, that it really has not lost any of its real nature. Manifoldness is only apparent. Man is only apparently a person, but in reality he is the impersonal being. God is a person only apparently, but really he is the impersonal being. Here, in one paragraph, this fundamental doctrine, much misunderstood, the idea of Maya, has been summarized. And the key word here is the word real. What is being said here is that nobody has really lost this full glory of being the one undivided impersonal being. What one is doing here is taking this principle, this conscious principle that is there in each and every one of us, and then asking, what exactly is this conscious principle? What is it that leads to this experience? I am experiencing the world. I am seeing this. This I am, which is the fundamental notion of the subject based on which we value things, give reality to things. What is that? See, when we think and work in terms of objective reality, we take the world as the first fundamental precept, and then on the basis of that, we start analyzing and getting into the guts of things. Here, what is being done is essentially taking the subjective experience of various things as the fundamental entity, the fundamental observed fact. I experience the world. The particulars of the world are not important, not significant, not fundamental here. It's the individual's experience of the world which is taken as the basic datum. In other words, this subjective experience is the raw data which is to be analyzed. And once you have analyzed it and found what is common to all experience, that is the universal subject. Which means basically I assume, and this is a problem in philosophy called problem of other minds. When I look at you and talk to you, I assume that you have a mind and that you have similar feelings and similar thoughts as I do. Therefore, in a certain very general sense, you experience the world in a similar way to what I do. Yeah? This subjective universality is the starting point, assuming that everybody experiences the world in some form or the other, and therefore trying to probe this universal piece of data to come to something which is common to all of this. It is this analysis that leads to this understanding of what is real in all this. See, the sense of when we say that the world is real, what do we really mean? We mean basically that my experience of the world grants it a certain reality. This granting of reality is a subjective phenomenon. Do we say that to a person who is dead or to a person who is in a coma, the existential world is real? Doesn't make sense, right? So it is somehow or the other this conscious experience of the world that grants it reality. We start with this data and then we start analyzing it, separating out the specific adjuncts from it till we come to the conclusion of what is it in us that grants reality to all experience. At this fundamental stage, the faculty of knowledge developing in philosophy into a subject called epistemology, and the philosophy of being, existence, also called ontology, coincide, sort of merge into one. So in some sense, knowledge of the world and existence of the world, or if you like, knowledge of existence of the world, starts merging into the same thing. This is what we are after here. What is the datum we start with? The datum we start with is the common subject in all our experience. I am. And I am does not mean that this individual physical I am. This I am awareness that is common to you, me, independent of what language we say that in. Yeah? That's why this Shankara keeps on saying, aham pratyaya gocharaha. Aham pratyaya. Yeah? This conviction that one is, I am. Yeah? That conviction points to this principle of consciousness in all of us. And then we start analyzing away the various details that clutter that I am awareness. And once this clutter is removed, this pure I amness, yeah, that is why it's called Sat, existence. That which is. Us is the dhatu, giving rise to Sat, that which is. So this isness, the sense of isness, which is there in each one of us, we start inquiring into it. The sense of knowledge, also called Chit. Yeah? Again, in each one of us, once generalized and removed from the various particular adjuncts. Same for Anga. That all particular adjuncts, when that is isolated and there is no second to perceive. So that is what we are after. That experience is what we are after. Which means that if it's when we say that, when Vivekananda says here that, excuse me, that the sense that the glory has not been lost, what one is saying here is that you take the sense of the real and inquire into it as far as you can go with this penetrating, analytical, inward directed intellect. That intellect, which means, again, as we have said before, that intellect should be replaced by the Sanskrit word buddhi, by which one means the capacity to feel, will, and think all combined into one, which means basically one's entire being. When one knows it with one's entire being, what happens? Then that individuality of the being is lost in the essence of being itself. And one understands that this individual, which I was thinking of as a person, is no longer that which is real. It is the universal I-ness or universal principle of consciousness or existence, which is what is real. What does that mean? You start with the raw data of the subjective experience and say, and ask the question, what is it that grants reality in all this? This is not something that we have to ask a question outside and write tomes of philosophy about. It's essentially an act of subjective honesty, which means probing deeper into oneself and asking what is it in oneself that grants reality to all experience, and then identifying that principle with that which we call another. I see your physical form in front of me. I immediately infer that this is a conscious being standing in front of me, and immediately start penetrating into what exactly is the conscious principle which I see clothed in this particular form, making certain sounds. Yeah, so this means this what is called, Vak, it's Vacharambanam Vikaranamadhyam Mritika Ityeva Satyam. Again in the Chandogya this is said. See, basically one says words. What is real about the words is that they connote something. Finally, they connote the subjective experience of some object. And then the focus starts getting directed. When we look at another person, the focus starts getting directed to the conscious principle in the other. And very often we see, particularly in the words of these great sages, be it Raman Maharshi, be it Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, whoever, what happens is that if when they speak, they address the core of the being of the other person. It is that which leads to the reality in this experience. Yeah? So when one speaks to another, one is not speaking to the more superficial aspects of that person's being, but rather to the core of their being, which is why it elicits this kind of a deep response. One of our former presidents, Swami Vidyanathanandaji, used to say that, look, we keep talking about this word spirituality, and very often we conflate it with various mystical phenomena without getting to the point of it. And what is the point of it? He says basically, do you have peace within? Is the mind constantly in turmoil and getting disturbed at the slightest touch? Or is it at peace with itself most of the time? One of our presidents used to say, where do you get your satisfaction? Does your satisfaction lie in somebody else's pocket? Can somebody else or some other phenomena outside you dictate your satisfaction? Or are you satisfied with your being itself? This is one criterion. The other, this is the aham of the aham brahmasmi, or in the tattvamasi tattvam. And at the same time, do you spread that in the form of service to those around? Do you emanate, and are you successful in making those around you joyful without, as just a quality of your being? These two criteria, yeah, being at peace with oneself and being able to be a source of peace and joy to others. These two are the sole criteria of what spirituality is about. The rest is just doctrines and dogmas and books and temples, etc., etc. This is the core of it, which means it captures the human spirit in its essence. From the point of view of Vedanta, what is it? Being at peace with yourself and developing that quality is essentially the Tvam Pad Shodhana. Yeah? Tat Tvam Asi. That's where we started this lecture. Tvam, you. That Tvam Pad Shodhana means as it becomes cleansed, purer and purer, what happens? That the mind develops more and more of a capacity to be at joy and peace without anything outside. First. Second, it also develops that capacity to be a source of joy and peace to those around. Excuse me. Yeah? So really, and so therefore, what is the cultivation of that? It's through meditation inwards and through service outwards. So which means it is our common sense daily life which has to be given a certain inner direction. That's all that is there to it. Yeah? And if one looks at it in such general terms, you want to frame it in some language, then that language becomes this Tattvamasi. The language is not particularly important. At some level, what is really important is the content that those words signify, and it signifies really this, being at peace with oneself and being able to be a source of peace and joy to those around. Otherwise, again, Vivekanandaji used to say that things become like billiard balls. Yeah? So individuals are like billiard balls bumping into each other and creating more and more chaos and conflict. So that's what it is. Okay. So this was essentially the idea behind this idea behind this theory of Maya. And what is being said here is that the idea of Maya is basically that what you are looking at is not the last word. It needs to be inquired into, because once you look around in the world, there will be this conflict, there will be this duality. So try to probe deeper and come to the universal conscious principle. Yeah? It's not supposed to be a doctrine in that sense. It is supposed to be an idea which tells us that I have not yet reached there, and therefore I need to probe deeper and deeper into reality, both subjectively and objectively. That's really what Maya is about. And what is Maya misunderstood? You convert it into a doctrine and then keep on dwelling about the various nuances of that doctrine. I forget who it was, probably Raman Maharshi. See, suppose you've taken all your garbage and thrown it in a garbage bin. What are you supposed to do with that? You're just supposed to throw that garbage out. You don't get into that garbage and say, oh, here is a rotten banana peel. Here is a used box. Here is somebody who has thrown some bodily waste in. You don't go on analyzing garbage. Yeah? Once it's analyzed, it's declared that, look, this is without value. The real value is in the subject, which is where I need to do the inquiry. And so you just take the garbage and throw it out. So analyzing and detecting what is garbage, what is inessential, it's what's called Viveka, and throwing it out is what's called Vairagya. Yeah? Throwing it out not physically, just saying that, look, I have no value for this. I have no need for this anymore. Yeah? And therefore, what is the context? Maya is the doctrine. Maya, if you think of it as a doctrine and keep on analyzing it, then there's a problem. Because that's the garbage that is to be thrown out. It's supposed to encourage a process of subjective inquiry, not keep on analyzing the object that has been excluded as not of value. What is happening really then? One is attaching value to that which one has declared to be without value. Yeah? So one is being led astray. So this really is what Maya is about. Now, how did this idea, how did this theory come into existence? Now, that's what is being discussed now. Even in this answer that it is all Maya, there have been succeeding stages, and philosophers have varied in their opinions. all Indian philosophers did not admit this theory of Maya. Possibly most of them did not. There are dualists with a crude sort of dualism who would not allow the question to be asked, but stifled it at its very birth. They said, you have no right to ask such a question. You have no right to ask for an explanation. It is simply the will of God, and we have to submit to it quietly. There is no liberty for the human soul. Everything is predestined. What we shall do? Enjoy, suffer. Have, enjoy, and suffer. And when suffering comes, it is our duty to endure it patiently. If we do not, we shall be punished all the more. How do we know that? Because the Vedas say so. And thus they have their texts and their meanings, and they want to enforce them. This is the crudest form of dualism. It does not satisfy the quest for knowledge in the human heart. Yeah? Which is why there has been a rebellion in the hearts of those who craved clarity, in the hearts of those who craved knowledge and understanding. See, we typically think of knowledge as something that is purely intellectual, but we do not recognize that it is the human heart that craves truth and understanding and clarity above everything else. And it is this core feature of our being, that desire for truth above everything else, clear knowledge and understanding, that impels the inquiry, the process of inquiry, the process which we call going on in our brains. Yeah? When these get unified and seen as one, the thirst and craving for truth and the process of inquiry start getting unified. Yeah? Here, what is being said is that people who have not been able to inquire so deeply, they get stuck at this phase of dualism. Yeah? And therefore, what happens? They come up with this bizarre notion that everything is caused and there is a cause and effect relationship in everything, and that is what the world is about. And they take this doctrine of cause and effect and extend it into a domain where there is absolutely no evidence of its happening. Yeah? So, extreme case are the karma kandins or the or the purva mimamsakas. Yeah? What do? They say that, okay, you perform such and such a yagna or such and such rituals, and then that is going to give you such and such an effect. And what is that effect? Oh, no. If you don't see that effect in this physical world, what will happen? Oh, it is some other effect which is basically apurva, which you are going to get in some heaven or the other. No wonder the skeptics throw away all this, and the more positive way of inquiry is what leads to Uttar Mimamsa or Vedanta. Yeah? It basically says that, look, this cause and effect relationship is true only in a limited context. Do not extend the domain of causality to a place where we have no evidence for its validity. Why? Because anything that is of real value in the human existence, be it art, science, or social work, any kind of fundamental work, that fundamental burgeoning forth of the human spirit. Yeah? The scientific pursuit is really a pursuit of truth. Yeah? Even though we cannot define and encapsulate truth, we pursue it. Arts of any kind, music, painting, literature, what is it? It's a pursuit of beauty. It's something that moves the core of our being. And Then there is who are these great poets? Somehow something flashes in their hearts and they write it down and they capture something universal in the human experience. And goodness, which is what social work is about. What is it that prompts, say, somebody like a Dalai Lama, who has been driven out of his country to go around different parts of the world advocating peace, world peace? What is it? And then that person comes across as somebody who is authentic. It's not pontification, not lecturing, not virtue signaling, but a simple conviction that there has to be a fellow feeling and empathy and warmth amongst different beings. So independent, I mean, a person does not have to subscribe to any particular ideology for this. A person does not have to subscribe to any particular organized religion for this. But when we start analyzing, we see that what is of great value in the human existence of anybody, be it a self-confessed atheist or an agnostic, what is of value is one of these things: the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of beauty, or the pursuit of goodness. Are these caused? And then when we start analyzing, we find that this cause and effect relationship breaks down completely there. So in our subjective lives, that which is of real value, that which is of lasting value, that to which we as human beings assign lasting value, these are not caught within the mesh of cause and effect. And therefore, people who have understood this or sensed this a little bit in their lives, a true scientist, a true artist, a true social worker, you ask such and such a person, that person is going to instinctively rebel against this kind of crude dualism which has a cause and effect relationship in everything, of everything being predestined. Why? Because that person's subjective experience shows that that which he or she values most is acausal, has not come through a cause and effect relationship. Well, you say this to somebody who believes in this doctrine of cause and effect, because they lack that subjective experience. They say, oh, it must be some cause and effect from some previous birth. What has happened? That, oh, they believe in this cause and effect relationship in everything, and therefore this wonder, this direct experience of wondrousness which gives value to human life, they completely suck out the wonder of it and attribute it to some mechanical repetition of various things. Then you probe their doctrine and it starts falling apart. Yeah. What is happening here? And this is really the rebellion against this crude kind of dualism. Yeah? Or this crude kind of dualism which is captured most efficiently in this otiose doctrines of Purva Mimamsa. I mean, Shankara in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya takes great pains to argue against these karma kandins. Yeah? Why? Because they reduce that which is the noblest, that which is of great value to us, to something that is mechanical, which it is not. It's exactly the opposite of something that is mechanical. So here, what is being talked about is this rebellion against the pure cause and effect relationship to something which is more fundamental and which uses the cause and effect relationship as a framework for understanding objective reality. Which is, what is that framework? That framework again is what's called Maya, right? So space, time and causation. We've said this many times. This is the framework through which we understand objective reality. It is a quality or a framework that is there in our minds. It's a fundamental framework, but it's there in our psyche, in our buddhi, in our minds. Whenever we direct our attention outwards and we want to understand some object, that's the thing that we understand it in terms of. But what grants value to it? That is something different and that needs to be inquired into. That's the Vedantic inquiry. So many years back, maybe 2004 or 5, there was this great scholar, Sitanath Goswami. He's a great Vedantic scholar, and we used to, in the Institute of Culture at Gold Park in Calcutta, he used to take these classes on the Brahma Sutras. He started off, and then for about a month, he went on analyzing threadbare the first 3 lines of the Adhyas Bhashya of Shankara. Yeah? And he explained one particular thing which has stuck even to date because it's so remarkable. See, what is the epistemological or the theory of knowledge according to Advaita Vedanta? And it's, different schools have what are called Khyati-vada. Yeah? So essentially, what is it that gives rise to this conviction that something is true? Yeah? Knowledge, theory of knowledge. And the Advaitic idea is anirvachaniya khyati, which means it is not something that can be encapsulated by a theoretical, intellectual framework. This is what that means. It cannot be talked about. It cannot be said. Just as the ultimate truth is the end point of the inquiry, so also in and through every act of cognition and knowledge, one needs to grasp this idea. What are the qualities of any piece of knowledge? Avidyak. Yeah, so these are the 3 description adjectives that are given. Avidyak, which means born of avidya. And you talk about this to somebody, they think that avidya is some kind of a thing. So avidya is this thing called non-knowledge. Out of that thing called non-knowledge, knowledge springs forth. That's a bizarre and completely weird interpretation. It's essentially trying to put in some mysterious meaning where no mystery is there. It's simply stating that before knowing, you do not know. That's all. Non-knowing of a particular thing is a precondition for knowing it. If something is already known, you don't say, I'm knowing this. Yeah? So that's the first condition, avidya. From avidya, you get vidya. Precondition of knowledge is absence of knowledge. 1. It's an obvious thing. Avidyak tatkal utpanna. That spark of knowledge or that flash of understanding happens at that instant. It is not something that goes through evolution in time. Which means what is happening here is that the theory or the epistemology, this anirvachaniya khyati in Advaita, is cutting through this notion of time. Tatkal utpanna. It happens at an instant. There is no time there. Third, abhinava. It is new. Every piece of knowledge that we acquire is new. What is this based on? This is based on, again, this is how we interpret it, but presumably some other people have interpreted it otherwise. This Kenopanishad, that statement is there. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. Pratibodha. In and through every act of cognition, pratibodha viditam. So every act of cognition is that spark of knowledge. If we have this introspective faculty sharpened, then every time there is a spark of knowledge, I see this laptop in front of me, I see you in front of me, I see a chair in front of me, or I hear a sound and I cognize, what happens? At that point of time, there is this spark of consciousness which catches hold and recognizes and gives me a piece of knowledge. that core of any knowledge is what is qualified by these three adjectives. Avidyak, tatkalutpanna, abhinava. And what does that mean? If we are to sharpen our minds to concentrate on that faculty, then it automatically entails that our mind has become so concentrated, so focused, that this spark of knowledge in our hearts, the moment it springs forth, can be captured. So, this is where this Anirvachaniya Khyati has its fructification. We will not be here next week. In any case, next Saturday is Independence Day. I'll be away. We'll return to this 2 weeks. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.